Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not. Hi there, and welcome to Better Than Not, the podcast that aims to capture shifting perspectives and thought-provoking ideas in conversation while asking the question, is anything what it seems? Based on my series, A Changing Frame of Reference, which you can read on the Substack app, and I hope you will, as it might give you some insight into what the podcast is all about. I also hope you'll subscribe to my YouTube channel so I can continue to bring you great guests like we have today. I'm your host, Doug Gardam, and today it's a pleasure to welcome to Better Than Not, Pastor Cameron Moore. Cam, how are you?
I am doing awesome, and I'm grateful to be here. Not every day, not every year that I get to be part of a podcast, actually. So this is exciting.
Well, I'm really pleased that you've had figured out how to get here and do this. So this is kind of cool. I'm very excited about the conversation today. Just a little bit more introduction on Cam. Cam is the pastor of Hub City Church in Nanaimo, BC, which is on Vancouver Island. For those that don't know, kind of the northern end of Vancouver Island, actually. And he's also a church planter. That is what he's actually doing in Nanaimo, and we'll learn a little bit more about that. Mm-hmm. Which kind of extends into how I actually found out about Cam and got introduced to him. So, on just a quick little story here, it's a big deal actually. But I was attending a brother's funeral, Gary Schroeder, who had, with his wife Margie, had decided to go to Nanaimo. They were called there to help Cam, shall we say, plant a church. And there's a little bit of what went on with that, because once they had decided to do that through a number of different things, once they landed, they sold their house here in Abbotsford and moved to Nanaimo. But once they had kind of moved and landed there, Gary was diagnosed with serious stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Mm-hmm. And a lot of things happened quite quickly, but that's why I ended up attending Gary's funeral late last year. And during the funeral, Cam stood up and did some of the eulogy. And I was kind of immediately attracted to the words that he said and how he said them about what was happening with Margie and with the passing of Gary. And in talking, Cam introduced himself in that he was from Atlanta, Georgia, and had been in a church there and decided to come to Nanaimo, British Columbia to plant a church, which extends into really what the first question is Cam, how does a person with their young family in Atlanta, Georgia, decide to go to literally the other side of the country in a somewhat rural area of British Columbia on the island to plant a church?
Well, first to answer that, just know it wasn't our idea. Like we did not think up this grand plan. Like, hey, let's decide to do this. But the way it did come about, and this is actually going to tie in to Gary and Margie. But 10 years ago, my wife and I got married in 2016. We immediately had the opportunity as newlyweds to come to Vancouver Island to serve at a new church plant in Victoria, just for that summer. And both of us had been raised as PKs, pastors' kids. Like, we had been raised in ministry and knew that church isn't just something that you go to. Church is who you are, it's who you're part of, and what it means to be part of the body of Christ. And so, like, built into our DNA, and we're so grateful for this, is being part of the church, whether that's in a you are a member, not in a vocational role, but you are an active member in your church. Like, we were going to be serving, volunteering wherever we could, or whether that was in a vocational or staff or pastoral position, we were sold into the church. But when we got to experience Vancouver Island, you can't not love Vancouver Island or British Columbia, beautiful British Columbia.
Yes.
When we came up here, yeah, of course it's beautiful. It's summertime. It's, crazy long days of sunshine. It's amazing. But then what really attracted us to this type of ministry, one is that the church that we were serving with didn't have a building, so we loved being outside and doing ministry at parks and at beaches and in coffee shops and at Bin 4 Burger Lounge. Like, we absolutely loved like being out and about all the time, talking about Jesus, with people that knew him, with people that didn't know him, with people that were just starting to seek Jesus or be drawn by him. It was just awesome. But then also, where I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, it's the Bible Belt of the United States. Like, kind of that southeastern area is definitely the Bible Belt of the U.S. And then you come up here,
Yes.
you mention the name Jesus or God, and some people don't have a point of reference for those words,
Mm,
Jesus or God, and ask, what is Jesus? What is God? And so, like, which really gave us a burden for a lot of the people in the northern United States and into Canada, because there's no point of reference for who this person is, who
right.
their leader is. And so that happened 10 years ago. Since then, we have been praying and hoping that God would one day send us out as missionaries to be part of church planting networks, to be church planters, not necessarily to be the leaders,
Hmm.
but to be part of that. Like, we wanted to give our lives to that mission. And so then, all those 10 years, really, I went to seminary. I did some full-time lawn care for a season. I worked at a frozen yogurt shop, but then all the while plugging into whatever church the Lord had us at. And eventually that led to a part-time worship leading position at a church down in Georgia. And through that experience, eventually the Lord just kept on giving me more responsibility in that church. And then it's there that I was ordained into pastoral ministry, and really the Lord confirmed our calling as a pastor, and then in that confirmed that what we had been praying and hoping for, to be missionaries, to be sent out to places that desperately need
Oh,
the
wow.
light of Jesus. He confirmed that in us, and yeah, that's a long story in and of itself, of how, what pieces and what he said, and through whom he said it, through which avenues he said it, to convince us he's sending us out as missionaries. And really, as soon as we said yes, all right, Lord, we trust you, we're going to give ourselves to training, we're going to do a residency program. We're not sure where you're sending us yet, but we're going to give ourselves to a residency and get ourselves trained up within the SEND network, or the North American Mission Board. And so as soon as we said yes to being trained as church planters, the pastor of that church plant on Vancouver Island he called our mentor that led us through the residency program. And he said, hey, we are ready to be part of something in Nanaimo, because the need is so great in Nanaimo. And it's funny, because Gary and Margie, we didn't know who this couple was at that point. They were hearing of the same need in Nanaimo, that over 60% of the people there would claim no religion or even atheism, but a very low percentage of people who would say they follow Jesus. And so we heard of that need as soon as we said yes, and it blew our minds that it was on Vancouver Island where this whole journey and this burden and passion started.
Oh,
And so
wow.
the first place that, once we started our residency in Atlanta, Georgia, the first place we went and prayer walked and visited was Nanaimo. And we were there for about 5 days by ourselves, just me and my wife. And we got on the plane after 5 days and looked at each other on the plane, and we knew we were supposed to be in Nanaimo. And
Oh,
this is like
wow.
fast forwarding, and maybe we can revisit some different pieces. But what's crazy is, as the Lord had been working in us, he had been working in the pastor down in Victoria where we had served, and getting Nanaimo on the map for them. Didn't know that, he was about to connect our stories. But then also he had been working in Gary and Margie. And so they had
Wow.
heard of the need about Nanaimo, had been burdened for Nanaimo. And it was actually Pastor Ezra at
Yes.
North that had heard, and he had been preaching about the need in Nanaimo. And so it was on the radar for Gary and Margie. And then a couple months later, Ezra's preaching again, and he mentions this family that has decided to move to Nanaimo from Georgia. And so Gary and Margie hear that, and they're like, all right, we've got to go and meet this family, and we're going to pray and decide if we're supposed to be there. And so we moved to Nanaimo in September of 2024. And
Oh,
then Gary and Margie came and visited us, I believe, right at the beginning of November of 2024. So about a month and a half, maybe, after we had lived there. And then at the end of December, they were texting and calling us and saying, hey, we've we've sold our house. We're going to move to Nanaimo with you guys." And like just every step of the way was incredible. Their story,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then they moved here. I believe it was Canada Day. I think they got here on July 1st.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah. No, that sounds right. Yes. Yes. Yep.
yeah, and just incredible to have them here. And yeah, I get emotional thinking of just their story, but then yeah, 7 weeks later, Gary was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer here in Nanaimo, and which was hard and
Oh,
hard still even to think about it. But then to see the Lord's faithfulness over and over, and just days before Gary died, I asked him, I said, "Hey, what has the Lord been teaching you in all of this?" And he said, "God is faithful.
yeah.
God is faithful." Like, because even in the midst of this diagnosis, they kept on seeing the Lord's hand and his provision for their family, and for doctors, and for travel to get back over to Abbotsford to go into hospice. And he ended up
Yes.
not being able to go into hospice because everything happened so quickly. But they moved July 1st, and then 3 months to the day on October 1st is the day that he passed. And yeah, I remember what I shared at the funeral is still very much my desire, is that, man, I hope nobody knows when they only have 3 months left to live or one day left to live. But I hope that when I've only got 3 months, I'm still saying yes to God in major ways, to upend, to sell my house, and to move.
Oh, no.
Because that is the testimony of Gary in my life, that he was never too old or beyond. He had just retired. He was never
Yes.
beyond saying yes to God in major ways.
Well,
Yeah.
those were the words that I remember you saying. Is God is
Mm.
faithful. That
Yeah.
was like quite impactful to me.
Yeah.
And so, just to kind of connect this story a little bit, which I didn't do originally. So Ezra Cody has been on the podcast talking
Cool.
about church planting, and timing wise was literally the beginning of last year.
Wow.
Like he was usually doing a plea for people who were interested in the church, wanting to get involved, and really saying, whether you have seminary training or whatever, if you have it in your heart, come and talk to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And that's what I remember quite distinctly. And then, so just to connect people listening, Gary and Margie were part of Central Abbotsford, which is a campus of the Northview Community Church, which is where Ezra is one of the lead pastors there. So there's
Mhm.
a whole link of connections. And what's very intriguing to me, and why this story is very impactful. So when you mentioned about Gary being brought back to Abbotsford, one morning I do a morning walk around the area where I live. I've been doing this for years, wherever we live. And
Mhm.
this one day, it's a bit damp out, and I'm walking along the road, and I see this lady with her hood up. And I say hello, because I say hello to everybody these days. And she passed right by me. I get to the end of this block, which is probably half a kilometer, maybe a little bit longer than that, and to do a kind of a loop back. And who is on the corner but Margie? I thought it was Margie in the first place. And she goes, "Doug." And we didn't know each other very well. Laura, my wife, got to know Margie through their prayer walk during the trip to Nepal a few years
Mhm.
ago. And anyway, she noticed my brown hat. She said, "You got a distinct brown hat." So we chatted. So I'm trying to figure out like what Margie's doing in Abbotsford, knowing they've moved to Nanaimo. I didn't
Yeah.
know the story about the transportation. I don't have a timing for this walk, Cam. It's somewhere, I start somewhere between 6:30 and 9. And for the next 4 days, I proceeded to see Margie every day
Mhm.
in a different spot. So the Bible study that we attended, we prayed for Gary as part of that. That was a Wednesday evening, and literally, I think the next day, I see Margie again, and Gary had passed. So when I
Mhm.
got back from my walk, my wife has the message from Margie.
Yeah.
And then on the day that I met you, which was the funeral day, I met her that morning again. And I was just like, because I'm beyond coincidences now. Like
Yeah.
all of this is like real, and it happens a lot to me, but it connects with this story that that of you coming literally to Nanaimo and how I then met you that day, and today here we are talking about your story. So
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah. And what's crazy, what you just shared about that walk and meeting Margie, I heard that story this morning because Margie is here in Nanaimo. Like
yes,
they moved 3 months later, her husband passes away, and Margie is still just dead set on God's call of
absolutely.
going to Nanaimo. And so she, on Thursday mornings, just at the beginning of this year, we started meeting in her living room Thursday mornings for prayer.
Oh, wow.
So we pray, and then I told her how it's like, hey, do you know Doug Gardham? Like,
Yeah.
and she's like, yes, oh yes, yes, and she was so excited. So, anyways, maybe she'll get a chance to watch this. So, hey, Margie.
No, a shout out to Marky.
Yeah.
Just what a strong spirit. Jesus is just incredible. But what's also kind of amazing in conversations is like I guess in some cases, like people are saying, like, is she coming back to Abbotsford? And she starts to connect up all the things that have gone on. She says it's just impossible for me to do that
Mhm.
because it's like I'm supposed to be here,
Yeah.
which for me it just magnifies that the glory, right, that's happening here, that when you open your eyes to it, you become open in your ears to it. That's
Mhm.
almost that's scriptural. You can't you can't stop.
Yeah.
Like it's quite incredible to me. So it's so when I heard you speak, I kind of said, okay, we met you afterwards in the hallway very quickly, and
Mhm.
I said to Laura, I said, Cam has to come on to the podcast because I have to learn some of this story because I'm not the first to have said, like, what brings a person from Atlanta, Georgia to Nanaimo, like that's, but now you've kind of filled in some of that story and you kind of say interesting. So I'm going to go a little back to say, like, you mentioned about being a missionary child, right?
Yeah, PK, pastor's kid.
Pastor's kid. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, pastor's
yeah,
kid. A new acronym that I'm not familiar with.
yeah. Yeah.
So, do you remember when this became like that presence of God, when you, like, that became a real thing for you? Because I'm thinking this is a very at a young time for you, but like, do you remember what took place for that to kind of like happen and I'll say take your heart?
Yeah, like it's been such a, man, a long journey, I guess. And some people don't think that because I mean, my wife and I were 31. But
Well,
like,
that's another point of the question, right?
yeah, being being raised in the church and by the church and in these Christian families that really, I mean, my parents' goal, her parents' goal is to treasure Jesus and to share Jesus. And so, like, from a very young age, yeah, I had a burden on my heart for being a missionary. And what's funny, um, is like when you're in youth group, you're always hearing that language, when you're going to your schools, like, hey, you're a missionary in your schools right now. You and all your friends like that are here, you guys are missionaries. And I was homeschooled, and so like I always had this like burden, like, man, mom, send me to school. And I've got five brothers.
Oh,
And
wow.
so
Okay.
it was a pretty could be rowdy sometimes. It was definitely never boring.
No, okay.
But like from this young age, like I just had this desire to go and impact the world, to share Jesus, especially for those that don't know him or have never heard of him. And so, like, yeah, over the years that became more and more real as that desire just grew, because it's funny, like I was homeschooled, always in the church, and then I ended up going to a Christian college. And while I was there, like, well, it was a huge blessing and it was of the Lord for me to be there. But even while I was there, like I would talk to some friends and we were like just entertaining the thought, man, what if we went to like a big party school, a party university, to go be missionaries on this campus. We are always entertaining these thoughts and what's going to happen after we
Yes.
graduate, where the Lord could send us. And so, and then in that university is where I met my wife. So we're at it's a Christian and Missionary Alliance school in Northeast Georgia. And so we met. We got married 2 weeks after we graduated, but we had met doing ministry together while we were there. And that ministry was, we both got asked to be on a worship team, a camp band is what we called it, because then the
Okay.
university sent us out to a bunch of different camps that summer to lead worship at different
Right.
youth camps and to represent the college. And so we met doing that ministry together. So we fell in love doing ministry, and then we dated for a year. We got engaged our senior year. And then we got married right after we graduated, 2 weeks later,
Oh,
and we
cool.
spent that first summer as newlyweds on mission on Vancouver Island. And so that was like the starting
Okay.
point, the foundation of our marriage was serving together. It was the foundation of our dating relationship, was serving together. And so like that burden has just grown as the Lord has put the people in my life and joined me and my wife together, like with the same heart. And so, like, I can't pinpoint an exact time when I was young, but it has always been, Lord, send us out somewhere. Like, we want to go out. We want to impact the world and share Jesus with people. So it's always been there. But then Vancouver Island, and I think having just graduated and now knowing, like, all right, Lord, you're going to send us somewhere, and yet I was still going to seminary, but having just graduated, getting married to my wife with the same heartbeat, or even a greater heartbeat sometimes than I feel like I do. She's so passionate about missions and the church, the body of Christ, discipleship is incredible. And so we knew, oh, this is really, Lord, you could send us out somewhere, and we could say yes, to wherever you're calling us. And so yeah, it just grew exponentially once I got married. And you know what? That's something that my wife's granddad had taught us,
Oh, wow.
that when you get married, it really doubles your capacity to hear from the Lord, because the Lord speaks to your spouse and he's speaking to you because you're united as one flesh,
I love that. Yes.
Yeah, and so it really has been an incredible journey since, my whole life, but especially since getting married now for 10 years. So,
Well, it's an odd thing when I think back to this a little bit, and I'll share a little bit about this. But before I go there, I'm really interested in this idea of this thought of you going, like you said, you went to a Christian college, you're homeschooled, and you're thinking, oh, send me to school,
yeah,
or let's go to you said a party college, and
yeah,
I'm kind of thinking like that's an interesting thought, because imagine what that, and now you're in that role, kind of, right? Like now you're in that, like we're not in a necessarily Christian
yeah,
town.
sure.
We're going out to do that, because I find in many ways, and this is how conversation kind of goes a little bit on this podcast, because that's kind of I feel that that's the world we're in. I'm looking at myself back in 2016. So like I was raised in the Anglican church.
Hmm.
And so I always wonder what didn't get necessarily connected, so that when we moved out to Abbotsford in literally the beginning of the pandemic, um, it was almost like another hand was moving us.
Yeah,
Like if you like, it was like we were in a hand and not knowing this. And so I literally wasn't even going to church when we moved out here. My wife had been baptized, in, I think 2007 with our daughter. And when we came to Abbotsford, something really shifted. Like, because the first time when the pandemic, it was like, well, if we can get this amount for our house, this was when we were on Ontario. And we always loved BC. Like, that was just the place to be. And our daughter lived here. She came out to Bible college in Surrey. And so we said, if we don't go now, we'll never go. And it was like one of the first times we both had a common decision in making this.
yeah,
And so that's why I'm giving you just a little bit of background, is that this almost like tsunami wave has overcome me, that I had no idea, because my background's engineering. I'm a science guy. And so all of that kind of like, I question, and I write a lot about this now, is like how science ever how separated from like Christianity. is
Mm.
really bizarre to me, because every road I go down now only leads me to God and Jesus, right? It's so bizarre. And now it's like, well, if this experience has happened to me, like, what are we looking at? And there seems to be happening a lot around the world, right? So now I get connected with someone like a Margie and a Gary, with an Ezra and numerous other pastors, and I'm going, listening to your story, and it's like, how neat it would have been to be in those colleges that weren't, and what might have happened too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Man, one thing that I'm super excited about now, because this is exactly like my thought process back then is that within our denomination, we've got this kind of like new collegiate ministry. It's called Canadian Campus Collective, and
Okay.
they're about to have a trip. The is he the president, the director? I don't know what his title is. The guy that oversees Canadian Campus Collective. Um, but he's bringing 3 college students, and he's bringing them out to BC to visit a couple of the church plants on the island, with the intention of either after you graduate, you guys are single and you're kind of looking for a job, look for a job by these church plants and come and partner with, like, move with them. So that could be one option, or they actually just transfer their credits and everything, their transcript, and they actually come to college here and be
Yeah.
missionaries as their college students. And like, so as soon as he mentioned that and talked about coming and visiting Nanaimo to meet us and talk about these possibilities, like, I mean, that's what, yeah, that was a dream of mine 12 years ago when I was still, maybe I was a sophomore or junior at that point in college. And I was just, yeah, it's amazing to hear now these students are praying about that and actually going on a trip to see about that coming to fruition. So it's so cool.
Well, it's kind of like a time that there seems to be, and I don't know whether it's because of the environment here or what it is. Like, I'm in this kind of situation where I just can't get enough. Like, there just seems to be, like, I'm connected with this course on history of Christianity. We've got Apologetics Canada coming with the history of church.
Uh,
We talk a lot about these things, and it's like all of these things in our world seem to be coming together, because many people, I think, Cam, are looking for a truth.
mm,
And I think in particular, when I think of, I'll say, youth in essence, they've already seen what's kind of left over from the internet moved in and technology, from the social media, and like the promises that was supposed to deliver, and actually has gone the other direction. Not that there hasn't been great things. Like, I think of
yeah,
a podcast like this. This is a wonderful chance to be able to have a conversation that you can't have really any other way,
yeah,
that others can actually connect with. But it's just like, it seems to be, we're just waiting. We're looking for an answer. And I'm kind of at a point where, well, first of all, I can't do this thing alone. Secondly, we're not in control. And thirdly, it's one of those things is, I don't think there's another answer. Like,
mm,
that's kind of the where I've kind of drawn, and that's come out in numerous conversations now,
yeah,
especially when you're down the science world. But now you're saying, like, with the CCC and having this whole connection with students. Imagine if that, you don't have to spend 30 years in the desert, so to speak, to find what is really, like, that's what the answer. And when we came here, I think the biggest shift for me was the attention to scripture
mm,
and what's there. If you follow what I mean, like, it's
yeah,
just, I was not, like, recently we just had Pastor Mark, and he was talking about how much history is in the Bible
yeah,
that's accurate.
hmm,
It's, and when you start to see that with, like, your ancient history study that you've kind of I've had interest in, and then it connects directly with things that are in Ezekiel or in Daniel, you're going, like, how come I don't know this? How come this
yeah.
hasn't been shown to me? And then at the same time, at that little saying that says, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, right? So when it comes back to where what you're doing here, this is like you're at the infancy of not only seeing something built, but you're part of it. Like, what does that do to your heart?
So much. There's so much, I guess, good and building up in the heart. There's also, I mean, there's a lot. Every day is a little different, like we're approaching every day with our hands wide open, and so sometimes it's all good that's happening in the heart. Sometimes it's like, oh my goodness, what have we done? Like there were a couple times, like as confident as we are in the Lord's call and how he directed us exactly here to Nanaimo, how he has provided a house for us, a vehicle for us, support for us. Like it is crazy that we would ever question that, because of how clear he has been. We asked him. There's a moment where God is speaking to Miriam in Scripture, and
Yes.
he talks about Moses, and he says, "Have you considered Moses? Like I speak to him clearly and not in riddles." And so, like we had been asking God, God, speak to us clearly and not in riddles. Like we don't want to try and decipher. We want it to be abundantly clear, and he has been. And yet there were moments when we moved here, like the first couple months, great. And there, I would wake up one morning and I would be like, what have I done? Like, like we brought our two kids here
Ah,
and are going to school here. And we left, like I resigned from a great job at a great church in Georgia, and following the Lord's call, and just had so many people looking out for us down there too. And yet all of them, when we ask God, all right, Lord, would you speak through the church? Like if you're indeed calling us, we want to speak to my pastor and his wife. We want to speak to those I work on staff with, some of our closest friends, and hear what they have to say, because we want to say, yeah, the Lord's not saying that to you. He's not calling you. And every single one of them said yes. Like we've seen this in your life for much longer than you have. We know that the Lord's calling you. And so, like, yeah,
wow.
they were all like supporting us, and many of them actually financially support us as well. And yet, like, there would be these mornings where I wake up and it's like, what have I done? Like, we moved 3,000 miles away, and
Yes.
all of them are down there, and so it has stretched and caused my heart to flex, but it has just grown so much as we have learned to continue trusting the Lord one day and 1 month and one season at a time. And yeah, even today, like we were sharing this with Margie, it's the Lord's provision over and over again, because we just had a lady that I've never met, my wife has never met, has reached out and has offered a huge, generous amount of money, like more than some churches donate
Unbelievably.
to help purchase some sound equipment that
Oh,
is
wow.
super versatile, very portable, so that we can set it up easily in a park or in a public space in a room that we would rent. Like it's just incredible. And she blew us. We were like, yeah, she offered this. We are like, if you could help with a chunk of this, she's covering the whole thing and then some. So that blows my mind. And this is one person that we've never
Yes.
met before.
Yep.
But then also this month we had a young adult. She's just out of college, and she's even been doing several different missionary journeys herself and discerning the Lord's call on her life. But she just started giving to us $10 a month. And that blows my mind equally, because people
Yes.
are like, the fact that people would look at not what they don't have and be like, well, I don't have this, so I might as well not give. She's like, no, this is what I have, and I'm gonna give. I'm gonna support, and so that blows my mind equally, as the same as the lady that we've never met that has given all this money to purchase
No,
some
it's
expensive equipment.
when
It's
you
crazy.
when you bring this up, and this is why I think it's such an interesting thing, because I mean, I can go through both sides, and this is like, as an example, in the corporate world that I worked, the to do, the goals, all those things, the to do list.
Yeah,
When I say you set up and you seem to miss the point that, yeah, you've got 10 things on your to do list, and most of the time you don't get the first two even done,
yeah,
but you keep doing this. Like you just keep doing it for not for days, for years. Like it's so propped into you. And you keep trying to do it. In fact, it reminds me of a little joke. They said, if you want to make God laugh, just tell him your plans.
Yeah.
And in my world now, Cam, that's so shifted. And this is I talk about this because there's so many things that I want to do. I don't do to-do lists anymore because it's like you're going to show me what I need to do.
Yeah.
Like it's just how it works. It kind of comes back to, and I'll go to Sermon on the Mount because it's like when you're in Matthew 6:24. This has become a huge one for me, and that is you can't serve two masters.
Mm.
And then in 6:33, it says, and if you seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. And it's almost like we don't connect those.
Yeah.
But once you start to be like, you feel like it's in your heart that it's connecting for you because you start, like you said, this woman you haven't even met. Where is that coming from? Right? Like
Yeah.
you don't, it doesn't work to the worldly world we've been taught or I've been taught to. And that's what's
Yeah.
so interesting when you kind of talk about that. It's like,
Yeah.
it's very real. In fact, the conversation I had earlier last week, they were saying that is more real than the material world we exist in.
Mm.
And I thought it was, and this is from a scientist, Cam.
Yeah.
And it was like she was giving me a story about it was not, I'll say it was kind of more of a secular story, but what had happened, and she had just decided she was going to move to the East Coast. She'd never been there,
Hmm.
but that's where she was going, and she didn't know why. And then she said, well, I should go and visit, at least to get the lay of the land. And then she met someone there that she had worked with years before, that there's no reason should have ever met that person. And you kind of go like, well, that's the Lord working, right? Like it's
Yeah.
just the evidence of it is. One of the things I said is when you open your eyes to that, like, well, it's over.
Yeah.
And
Oh
it's
man.
so interesting that at such a young age, you've been able to. A lot of it's probably support too, but you've been able to grab a hold of that and like kind of held onto it so that like it's the evidence of it is so real to you.
Hmm.
Like I don't even it seems weird to even call it evidence. It's just how we live now, right?
Yeah.
And it's really how we I'll say from the secular side, how we get convinced that we think we control things is mind-boggling to me. Like even when you get up in the morning, like what you just said this to me like this morning, what happened to you? Like none of that you knew yesterday. Like I'm kind of really blown away by this. And that's why
Yeah.
it's so interesting to see, okay, how can stories of this kind of impact other people who are searching? Because I think people are searching more than ever now. They've just like the world has let them down. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, the pandemic, you go through that. How bad do we need each other? Like you must see that all the time.
Hmm.
Like but you've been raised in that world, so you know how important we are to each other. Like
Yeah.
we don't do well not talking to anybody for a few days.
Yeah. Seriously. I so there yeah, this podcast has actually been postponed because last week I
Yes.
I was sick. And I, you know, I I have a relationship with the Lord, like that I treasure, and I treasure Him and know His
Mhm.
love for me. I constantly need to be reminded of His love for me, actually. But when I got sick, my wife locked me in our bedroom, and she slept in a different one, and so like she slept with my daughter. And so like I was in this room just for 3 days, like I was pretty much just horizontal, like laying kind of in and out of consciousness while I
You
was
were
getting
not well.
was not well. And it was 3 days, and it was, I mean, typical winter weather for out here. It was just gray and rainy. And so, like, I was in this box, and then I would lift up the window, I would kind of get enough energy to get over there and lift it, and it would just be gray. Man, I felt the struggle just not being like in close contact with hardly anybody that
Mhm.
those couple days. So I can't imagine living a life like that.
Well, you
Where
see, it's interesting because you're aware of it
yeah,
and you feel it. Imagine if you're
yeah,
not aware of it, even.
yeah,
Like, I mean, when you think today, we don't have to really leave the house. Like,
mm,
we're big moviegoers. We like to go to the movies and out. You don't have to go to the movies anymore. Everything's right on
yeah,
your screen, right? You don't have to go out to eat. You don't have to go out and get groceries. You can just phone and skip the dishes, brings it to your doorstep.
yeah,
It's like,
and
oh, I just find it
yeah,
amazing. So if you're not aware that, I really should be going out so I can at least talk to somebody at this at Shoppers Drug Mart, like, or whatever it is,
mm,
just to have that interaction with another person.
yeah. Yeah, I love talking about this, and I have a lot of like wondering thoughts, and they've probably gotten me in trouble too, because I'll just kind of I don't say things as fact. I'm like, oh, let's wonder about this, but something I've been thinking is yeah, like we don't have to leave the house, and not leaving the house, we can still have whatever we want whenever we want it, if we do skip the dishes or DoorDash, whatever it may be. Like we are not hurting for food because we can order that whenever we want, and
Yep.
even if you have a credit card, you get approved, then you can buy things with money that you don't have. Like anything can be shipped to you.
Yep.
But then also with these phones that we can order anything from, like we are receiving constant communication. And I just thought of it the other day as if like, I mean, who knows the millions of prayers that the Lord is hearing and can be attentive to each one right now.
Hmm.
And yet we're making ourselves in that position of God by the millions of avenues of communication and messages that we're receiving, whether it's just text messages and emails or all the little 15-second videos we're watching on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook Reels, like whatever it
Hmm.
is.
Yep.
And it's like we think we can handle it. Well, I think what you're saying is true though. We're realizing that we can't. We can't handle it, but it's like we have set ourselves up to kind of play God, and we're realizing I'm so anxious because you weren't made to handle this amount of information that is coming at you 24/7, you know?
Well, the more of it that you're exposed to, the harder it is to actually go out that front door.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like someone that's aware of it, I'm very aware of it. You're very aware of it. But even after you said you probably after you were in there for 3 days, it's going to feel strange to go out the door.
Mm,
Like it happens that quickly to me.
yeah.
And I really became aware of it when we moved out here because we didn't know anybody. And I write a lot, so that's kind of a solitary exercise as well. And I became aware, like, one thing in the corporate world, you've always got meetings. You're always seeing people, not necessarily in non-conflict situations that you don't necessarily want, but you're
Mhm.
always in that communication mode, so to speak.
Yeah.
But when we moved out here, that wasn't the case. So like I literally had to start picking the phone up and inviting people out to coffee. Like that's kind
Yeah.
of how it started to kind of go from there. Cause if I'm waiting, my phone's not ringing. Like and and you start to think, well, is anybody else's phone ringing? So let's sit down and watch another Netflix series. Because
Yeah.
it's so easy.
Yeah.
Makes me kind of feel good, right? Because it's kind of maybe a good story. I get to do the emotional thing, but I'm by myself. It's all like
Yeah.
not connected. So when you mention that about like all those things going on now with our phones, like it's kind of staggering. And we think, oh, I can control it. Ah,
Yeah. Yeah.
we
So go ahead. Go ahead.
well, we just in the Bible study we recently went through the Solomon story in Kings, and it's like I'd always thought of Solomon as the wisest and the wealthiest man, like he was the great king, not realizing like literally through I'll say his wife's connection, he worshipped Moloch.
Mm,
Like Israel was split because of him as a king.
yeah.
Like here I am, like I'm. How am I? This is the first time I've actually understanding that.
Mm,
So if the wisest man can't handle it, Cam, like it's game over for me. It's like
mm,
I
yeah.
better start paying attention, right? Like that's kind of what
Yeah.
I'm thinking. And if that can get to anyone, like maybe the podcast has served a purpose, right? Like you've heard that, like you repeat all the time, Doug, as an example. Um, being alone is not a good thing. Like it's not. We hear often loneliness epidemic. You probably have to deal with that a lot, Cam. Like that's
Yeah,
why I'm interested when you said you have a lot in this world to think about, because I'd like to hear more of how you see that, because you're at a different demographic as well.
yeah, for sure.
And so how that kind of rolls out of how you see evidence of this and what can be done, like how important your role is in that too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting when we talk about loneliness because like I almost feel like I've just been ringing this bell for too long. And it's like it's becoming cliche almost with everybody that comes up and visits and they ask about Nanaimo, tell us about Nanaimo, tell us about this place. But every single, especially new conversation that I have, if it's somebody that I haven't spoken to, I love to ask them, one, what do you love about Nanaimo and Vancouver Island? And then I ask, what do you think is one of the challenges that most people face here? And for we've been here for almost 16 months. For 16 months, people have been saying loneliness. Like people really struggle with loneliness here and
Really?
finding community. So much so that like even when we moved here, we'd meet new people. We're like, yeah, we just moved here. They're like, oh, are you finding community? Like that's what they're concerned with. Like, how's your neighborhood? And so they're asking us. People that aren't even believers or followers of Jesus are checking on like, do you guys feel like you have community? Have you settled in and know your neighbors pretty well? And actually, we do because like right when we moved here and everybody that we're talking to, like, okay, this is the biggest need. The first week we moved here, we
Wow.
made some cookies that were not gluten free, and they had all the unhealthy things in them. Like
They
we
were
learned,
good.
oh, we probably need to make some options. Yeah, yeah. Once we learned more of that climate up here, but then we went and we just started knocking on our neighbors' doors and had a plate of cookies. We warned them that they weren't good for you at all, and people were shocked. And then there are some people that were like, they're like, oh, we should be doing this for you guys. You're the new ones here. But then several people said they're like, man, like this is how things used to be. Like
Yes.
neighbors used to come and knock on doors and so we've been really intentional of walking and prayer walking this neighborhood and always asking the Lord, all right, Lord, help us meet somebody that we haven't met yet. And we do if we see somebody in their yard, like we walk into their yard,
That's
and
cool though. That's
what
so cool.
we found that most people will not initiate that.
Yes.
Like they won't, but it's welcome. It's like shocking, and then they kind of welcome it, and then they enjoy that conversation, whatever direction it goes in. And but one thing, like whenever I hear, especially if there's a believer that's in our neighborhood, sometimes like I've met people out in town, and Nanaimo's about 100,000 people, and so I've met people. They're like, oh, so and so lives in your neighborhood. They're believers, and so I'll figure out what the house is theirs. And one time I went and knocked, and I knocked and introduced myself, and they were kind of very shocked, like, who is this? And we talked for 5-10 minutes, but it ended with them saying, you're brave for walking down the street and knocking on a random person's door. And they're Christians. And they said, we've lived here for 7 years and I don't know any of my neighbor's name. I was like one, it doesn't feel very brave. Like when I think about, you see the testimony of God's people in scripture, both in the Old and New
Yep.
Testament and what they've done. And here I am, I'm trying to follow in their footsteps. And what I'm doing is I'm just knocking on a door to go meet my neighbors. And for that to be called, it doesn't, for some people, that's a huge step. Like they would
Yep.
never think about doing that. And
Right.
so yeah, and it can be considered brave, but like to be living somewhere as believers, as God's kingdom people, to then proclaim that good news of the kingdom of God and of being reconciled to God. Like that's our role as disciples of Jesus. We are his
Hmm.
ambassadors. To live somewhere for 7 years and to not know any of the people that live beside you, like I'm really convinced. I think there is close to being a Christian family, a kingdom presence on every street in Nanaimo. Like I think we're close to that, but it's just our doors are closed and we don't know how do you start a conversation with a stranger? We ask people, we're like all about like let's teach people how to share the gospel, and
Yes.
to share their faith. But when we say that, we're really asking people to do two things. And this just hit me like probably a couple months ago. I was like, oh wow, we're asking people to do two things when we say share their faith. Because one, we're asking them to share the message of Jesus or just talk about Jesus, you know. But then the first thing we're asking people to do is to start a conversation with a stranger. You know, it's and so I've been like honing in on, I'm like, all right, this week, guys, or even this month, don't worry about trying to steer the conversation toward Jesus.
Oh
Just
yeah.
practice starting a conversation with 5 strangers this month. You know, like just starting it.
Cam, that is genius. And because I couldn't agree with it more. Like I like so one of the things that it wasn't an experiment. This was a reality for me. So I've written a couple books. I went on book tour, and not being famous and you're in a bookstore, like nobody wants to see you. Like bookstores are full of introverts, so to speak, that
Yeah.
don't bother me. And what I learned, and this is carried on enormously, is that 5-letter word hello.
Hmm.
It's magical.
Yeah.
So when you go to what you've just said, I'm telling you, we get so caught up in what it is we have to talk about that we've forgotten you got to start talking
Yeah.
for that to happen. And
Yeah.
if you start with the word that you're not, let's start with Jesus or Bible, you're already reluctant.
Yeah.
And people know that vibe right away. Like
Hmm.
we give it off. Like it's an instant thing. You just, and so, but hello is like, I almost never, I say it about doing a morning walk. I almost never get a blank from saying hello to somebody. It's almost never.
Yeah.
It occasionally happens, but we move on. But almost everyone responds. And I'm
Yeah.
not looking to sit down and have a conversation, but it would be very easy to follow hello with how are you?
Yeah.
And I'm laughing at it because it's become, we get so like kind of like, I think of the kids like they used to go around for like selling chocolates or something for some charity that they're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
And it's like that's what they're going to do, right? So that's big in your head, and you don't think about like, well, just say hello to somebody, like
Yeah.
just kind of start it. So when you said that, what was your response? Because like that's quite different approach, right?
Yeah. Like when I said, "Hey guys, let's just practice starting conversation with strangers."
Yeah, like you mean I
It's
don't have to mention Bible? Like,
yeah, it's actually like so much. It can still be intimidating, you know,
oh
especially
sure,
like we've realized up here, typically just more in the northern United States and Canada, people are a little more reserved, you know, when it comes to starting a conversation. But it's so much easier because for whatever reason, yeah, like when we think about talking about Jesus, we're so nervous about saying something wrong or not totally right. And that's probably a good concern, but
hmm,
like I'm a Star Wars fan, and so like when I get excited about somebody that has seen Star Wars, like I'm not worried about saying something wrong. Like, you know, I've been corrected before, like, oh, I didn't remember that exactly, you know, but
yep,
I'm excited because I get to talk about something that I have watched, I have witnessed, you know, and then yeah, for some reason it just changes with Jesus. Like let's be excited. And if you're meeting with Jesus each day, like yeah, you should be excited to talk about what he's done in your life recently. Like we tell our neighbors all the time whenever God answers prayers, and that's been awesome to see their faces. You know, 'cause we got some people that are they would say they're agnostic or atheist even, and
yes,
so then they would laugh at the prayers that we pray, and then we talk about how God answers them, and their face gets kind of straight, and you're like, interesting. But but then when you ask people to, hey, don't worry about that right now, because really the truth is that God's going to see your obedience too. I want to grow in this area. Like often we can start conversation with strangers and Jesus comes up very quickly.
oh,
Because he's our life, you know, he's the reason that we're up here, you know. So for us it's a little bit easier, but like even for yeah, the people that are local to Nanaimo, like Jesus is coming up naturally as people are learning, you know what, I need to go meet this neighbor. And and that's three things. I'm kind of, I feel like every time I start talking, I start going in so many different directions. But three things that we really like are big values in my wife and I, like our family's life, and we want to see it reproduced in our church, and it is one, we practice hospitality
Ah,
regularly, and sometimes I think we could like, confuse hospitality with entertainment. Like it's not entertainment's stressful. Like you're
yes.
everything exactly right. Like it's opening up our home. Like we had a lady in our house last night. Like we got to hear her testimony, and our living room was a mess. Like there were toys everywhere, but we are just opening up our lives for her to come in, and you don't have to have a home. Like Jesus didn't have a home, and he's just
Yeah.
intentional caring for people. So like hospitality, we're making space where we are intentionally caring for people and inviting them into our lives. And two is honesty. Like we're not trying to claim that
Uh-huh.
we have it together. I meet with two guys here in Nanaimo at Tim Hortons on Fridays, and we ask each other, what struggles do you have? What successes have you seen? What's God saying to you through his word, through his spirit? Do you have any sin to confess? Is there anything you desire to keep secret? Like we're just being brutally honest, and which could sound scary for people. It's been a big part of my journey is confession and honesty. And so
Mm.
I love it. It's still humiliating, but it's very healing. So that hospitality, honesty, and then normalizing talking about Jesus in every space, whether it's in Tim
Oh,
Hortons or whether it's around your kitchen table or whether you are out at Costco or you're in a parking lot, like wherever it is, like we have the privilege and ability to talk about Jesus. And so as we make space for that through hospitality, intentionally caring, and even like I think practicing starting conversations with strangers is a form of that's falling underneath hospitality. You are
oh
intentionally
yeah.
making space to care for people,
Yeah.
to look at people, to take an interest in people, which as believers in Jesus, and then when we mention Jesus' names, like maybe it communicates this idea. Okay, this person that follows Jesus is interested in me. So if Jesus is real, maybe he would also be interested in me.
I love that.
And so we're just yeah, my mind goes so actually I had a young adult tell me recently, they're like, Cam, you might be ADD. I was like, that hurts. Ouch. But yeah, we're just, hey, start a conversation with a stranger. Don't worry about the Jesus piece at this point. Like, we're going to get there,
Yeah.
but we're finding the Jesus piece is coming in pretty naturally as you're starting these conversations.
I,
So,
I I think it does. Like I think those are the things that start to really take place. It's funny you mentioned about like having people come to your house and your house is a mess, you said, right? Like that was
yeah,
the comment you was. And it's like someone commented to me the other day is no one just drops by anymore.
yeah,
Like that used to be a thing. Well, just drop by, right? And it's like, and I kind of feel like that's a neat thing to do,
yeah,
but it's like it doesn't. It's like okay, let's try and be a little more intentional about that then. Like
yeah,
let's see if we can just like I'll just come over, right? And often for me now, I want to get out. Like I want to get out of the house. Like yeah, come over for coffee, but then I don't get out of my house. And my kind of intention is to get out of my house so that I'm out seeing different people, right? So
yeah,
it's like it's funny because you just don't do that anymore. We don't just drop by. Like I'm just gonna drop by and see what you're doing. Like it's like, well, my house isn't in order. Well, why do you think I care? Mine isn't either.
yeah, yeah. Man, so we have been doing that, and like
I like
I
that. That's a
wonder
cool idea.
if we're getting like a reputation as this family that came up from Georgia, like from the southern United States, and just throwing a wrench in how normal social life is lived, I guess. But yeah, we stop by all the time. Like if we're around town and we're like, hey, so and so lives in this neighborhood, like we'll go and knock, and it's funny. Like again, people are surprised, and then the comment comes like you said, nobody does this anymore. It comes like, I've missed this. Nobody
Yes.
nobody stops by anymore. This was night. Like I've missed this, and I don't know if we've slowly been getting there or if COVID then just like expedited that process of just kind of more that seclusion, not stopping by. But yeah, I
Well,
don't know.
I think there's a lot of forces that are at work in this, right? I mean, the pandemic just kind of amplified it all. But I think a lot of things, like, I mean, when both husband and wife are out working, right? That becomes a little bit more difficult just to drop by during the day.
Yeah.
and things like that to just kind of complicate it. Plus, technology has further added it. Why would I go out when I can get everything right in my living room here?
Yeah. There was this brilliant commercial. Um, I can't remember. It was like Subaru, or it was some like car commercial back when they had commercials. So like, yeah, this would have been several years ago. But so it would have been as streaming is becoming the dominant thing, but not quite there yet.
Right.
And Facebook and Instagram are becoming dominant. And it was like this millennial, like someone my age or so, like was sitting, in this really dark room, on her phone with a blanket, and she's like talking to the camera, like I'm really worried about my parents, like they haven't updated their Facebook in a long time, and then it shows their parents, and they're taking their Subaru, they've got a bunch of friends, and they've got mountain bikes, and they're going out, and it's like these bright colors, and it's amazing. It goes back to her, and she's like, yeah, the last update was 2 months ago, and they've been inactive. She's like, I just don't think they're connecting socially with anybody. It goes back to them. They're laughing around a campfire with friends,
Oh
like
wow.
it was, and it was like prophetic, because like if they only knew how much it has progressed since then, because this was, I mean, it was probably 10, 12 years ago that I saw this commercial,
You
and
know
just thought it was hilarious, and yet, yeah, so
that
spot.
commercial's still very real. Like
Yeah,
like that could play today and it'd be a really good commercial.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
maybe somebody listening grabs it in the advertising
I
world
know.
and says, "Let's
I've
do
not
another
been
one
able
like
to
that."
find it. Like I have no idea. Like I've mentioned it several times to people, and but I've not been able to find it since then. So I have no idea
I
where.
I miss clever commercials. I
Yeah,
do miss clever commercials because now I kind of feel like many of them are like making fun of someone
yeah,
in a fun way, so to speak.
mhm,
We all believe that animals can talk. Like it's all these things, and it's kind of like how low do we want to go with our brains and thinking? Where's the cleverness that like
yeah,
used to be around, like some of the commercials that were there?
yeah,
So I kind of miss that. So I'd love to see a commercial like that because I think
yeah,
that's very cool.
yeah.
So Kim, I wanted to like kind of go and visit a little bit more on yourself because you've been given some gifts in the little short time that I've even talked
Mhm,
to you. And I'm wondering, did you become aware of like, for example, um, when you delivered the eulogy, very eloquent and very like you were very capable of being able to articulate your ideas, the
mhm,
spirit of faith of God, and quite and appear to be quite comfortable doing it. Like I call that a gift. Like
mhm,
um, I think of being able to communicate with other human beings is kind of a gift because not everyone has that ability to feel comfortable in having a chat, as an
mhm.
example, right? It just, for whatever reason, they don't have that kind of, they'll have another spiritual gift, but they don't have that kind of gift. Did you become aware, and I'll speak particularly of, I'll say, talking to another person, but also in, shall I call it preaching? I don't know whether that's the right word, but in being able to speak in front of a group of people comfortably and articulate your idea. Like I haven't seen you speak very much. Like I said, at the
Yeah,
eulogy, that's a tight time for people to talk. I mean, there's that joke about they say most people that where we set our standards is no one wants to public speak. And if you really look at it, that's the more fear. So more people are more fearful of public speaking than of dying. So the joke is more people would rather be in the coffin than up doing the eulogy. I'm doing a terrible job of the joke, but it kind of sets the pattern for so many, right? And I just wondered,
yeah.
like, did you become aware of this, or was it just something that just fit into you? Like, I would not say you have to work at it, but at the same time, I know there's work behind those things. But were you aware of that, like some of those spiritual gifts that you've been given? Because like they're apparent, and it's interesting to see like how that manifests itself in what you're doing in church planning.
Yeah. Um, I really wasn't aware of it really until college. And so I'd always been musical. And
Okay, okay,
yeah, and so and I think that actually is going to play into how the Lord has now kind of shaped me. I've always been musical. I've played guitar. I started learning how to play guitar because me and my friend, when we were 10 years old, wanted to start a band,
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And so we
I
started
can
getting
totally
lessons.
relate to this.
Yeah, and it was fun. We did do a bunch of Battle of the Bands. We played in Atlanta. Like that was actually a really fun season, and kind of shaped, and it still was missional in my heart. Like we
Interesting.
wanted to play in these secular venues, and then often we were leading worship somewhere the next morning. It'd be,
Okay.
or like in the next 4 hours. It'd be like 2 a.m. or something, and it's like, yeah, we got to be here very soon. And but then we'd be inviting people and sharing with each other who we are. But so like I'd always been musical, and never had a desire to speak, and even still, like we went to Georgia over Christmas,
Okay.
and I was asked to speak at our sending church, which is a large church down in just south of Atlanta, and I still feel like the night before, the morning of, my mind is like, why did I agree to this? Like, why did I say yes to this? And so like you always go through and then you get up there, and you've prayed and you've studied and you've researched and you've written and you've edited and you've read it out loud, and then you start, and you still have that feeling in your stomach, and for me it's up until the moment I start,
Mhm.
and then the Lord really takes over, and then I realize I'm on my last page of notes, and I finish it, and then still in my mind as I'm closing, I'm like, how fast was that? Like, did I just say all of this in 5 minutes? Like you're always like second guessing yourself. But it's really been something that's had to be spoken and confirmed in me from other people. Um,
Okay.
you're
Okay.
saying, did you become aware? Like really from pastors, from my parents, from my professors, from my in-laws, like all of them have confirmed this in me, and even when I was still, like, I thought music was going to be the main thing, and I was leading worship at our college for our chapel, and then I would have these moments in between where I would kind of introduce a song, and all the other chapel leaders would come up to me and they would be like, we were just sharing, hey, here's something that you're great at. The Lord's using you in a major way. Here's an area of growth. And so we were sharing all that. And all the chapel leaders came to me and they said, hey, we think your greatest strength is the moments that you speak in between, which now
Wow.
that I look back on that, I'm grateful they said that. In the moment, it was like, dang it, like I really want the best parts to be when I'm singing, because
Right.
like I've never been great vocally as a vocalist, and so I tried really hard, like, and stretched myself vocally to become a better singer. And so I'm always like, come on, please say that I'm like nailing it here, and never, like, nobody was ever like, hey, you really nailed singing that song. And the first time I preached a message at the church we were at in Georgia, the first
Oh,
time,
wow.
of course, it was the Sunday after Christmas, because the lead pastors, they don't preach on that Sunday. They always give it to one of us. Yeah,
The
you
next
guys
one.
do this. And so it was the first one, and this guy came up to me, and we call people like him good old boys, just a good old boy. He's a southern kind of redneck feel, and he came up to me and he went, Cam, he said, I think you might be better at preaching than you are at singing. And I was like, okay, thanks. Like, I'm there on staff full time as the worship leader, and I'm like, right. I think I appreciate that. Thank you. But yeah, it was something then that through people, it was really kind of finally where I got to the point. I was like, all right, Lord, I trust that this is a spiritual gift from you. Like, because in,
Yeah.
in seminary, yeah, I got a C in my preaching class. Like it's not that great, for whatever reason.
So
And
funny. That's so
but
funny.
but then, like, one of the things, and I've kept this with me, and just try to remain confident in the Lord in it. But one of my pastor down in Georgia, he said, Cam, the Lord has gifted you to be able to have a conversation, or preach a message to anybody, whether you're meeting one on one with somebody that is 60,
Wow.
70 years old, or you're meeting with a young adult, or you're meeting with somebody your age, or you're preaching to a crowd of people that are biblically literate or illiterate. Like, he's just kind of confirmed that in me. And I'm like, all right, Lord, I really think this is from you. So now just take away the butterflies then every time I have to do this, because I still am
Mhm.
like, why did I agree? Why did I say yes to doing this? But yeah, it's definitely a spiritual gift that that I was made aware of gradually from
Okay.
professors, parents, in-laws, pastors. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great support to hear that
Mhm.
though. Like to hear that kind of that come about. It's neat how you can even articulate how that happened. Like
Yeah,
that in itself is
yeah,
kind of gift, right? Because it's
yeah.
like, well, I don't know what happened. It
Mm.
just one day I could do this. And the
Yeah,
butterflies, I think, is such a fascinating thing because I
and
think that's real.
yeah, yeah. One of the things, like my dad, like we're really close, and the church that I was serving at was a campus, a church plant that had been planted out of the church my dad pastored. So I was still connected with him, and so my first sermon we looked at together, we watched it, and he was like, "Man," he said, "you really." He said, "A lot of times you have you have a style, you know, you can see like, oh, you remind me of so and so." He said, "You really don't remind me of anyone in particular." And then he went, "You know what? Actually, you do." He said, "You remind me of Barack Obama, President Obama." And, and he said, because he just had this cadence about him, you know, and my dad was like, he says, "I didn't always agree with everything he said, but I always liked the way that he said it."
Yeah. Well,
And
that's a big compliment.
yeah, and I think, and that's where I think the music has come in, because
Yes.
I actually like, and I don't do this so much anymore, but with my first sermons, I was a music major in college. I would always do a manuscript, and I put music notes in there, or I would put a big crescendo, like, okay, I want to get a little bit louder right here, because I'd recorded myself. I was like, yeah, I'm not nearly as passionate as I thought I was. Like, I'm gonna put a crescendo right here, or I'm gonna put a little pianissimo, like just because I want to say this a little bit quieter and slower. And I think, yeah, that just that musical
Yep.
experience growing up is really what has developed that cadence to where yeah, somebody said, they're like, I feel like I just listened to a spoken word, and I was like, cool. I don't know, you know, like interesting.
No, that is to me like it is a gift. And it's like it's one of those things when you see it in a person. I never really knew that for
Mm,
many, many years, but now I see it and you can kind of see like that's a gift. But
yeah.
what's really I think important is that one knows that. Like you don't it's not like because I've heard people kind of with false humility kind of say things that like, oh, no, I really don't. And I
Mm,
think no, you need to understand that you do and be proud, like or not proud, but like happy that you've been gifted with that kind of thing.
yeah.
And I think the music part is a very key thing. And the reason why this kind of gets me, so the original pastor that was at Central Abbey, where we attended, was I don't know whether you met Joshua Scott or not.
I don't think so.
So there's a little story of Ezra and Joshua Scott as well, but he's now the weekend and teaching pastor at Northview. But I had him on the podcast very early on, and so because he was the pastor that was kind of my counsel for getting baptized,
Mm,
and he was. We sit down and we talk and we said a little bit, and I don't know how we got into it, and then he said, "I love music." And then he talked about how when he was kind of to take over Central Abbots as they opened as a campus, they wanted him to be the worship pastor and the pastor. And he says, I can't do both, which was
mm,
a great decision, right?
yeah.
But I had no idea that he was musical. Like he didn't sing, play guitar, anything to see it.
Yeah.
But he has that gift that you have. Like
Mm,
he has that gift to meet people. He has that gift to be able to, I'll say preaching, but be comfortable in that world. And it's
yeah.
so neat that it's connected with music.
Yeah.
I think it's very real. Part of the thing that I think is a big thing too is I think music really connects with your heart.
Hmm.
And I think I was reading this in J.I. Packer's book, Knowing God. But he was saying about you can know about God, but do you know God?
Mm,
Like there's the whole intellectual part of being able to know the history and all that. But
yeah.
then do you know God in your heart?
Yeah.
And for a long time, I didn't quite understand the difference. But I think how music really helps. I think of David, right? Of playing for Saul. I think it's an enormous advantage to have that into that matching with that gift of being
Yeah.
able to speak and communicate with people because it's so emotional. Music is just
Mhm.
almost like you know instantly whether you like a song or not, for instance, right? It's an
Yeah.
emotional thing. You can quantify it all you want with like how fast it goes or whatever, but as soon as you hear it as an individual, you know almost instantly, I like that song or
Yeah.
I don't like that song.
Yeah.
And to me,
Yeah.
that's an emotional kind of reaction. So that connects with the ability to articulate with words the ideas that you're thinking, and then being able to bring those in front of people in a sense that's understandable
Yeah.
is really neat. It's kind of neat having this in this conversation that you brought that up because it's like a real
Yeah.
thing. It's a real
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I wonder, uh, Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien,
Yes.
he in his like kind of creation narrative for Middle Earth, it's all created through song. Like it's such a cool like creation narrative that he created. But then even like when you read Genesis 1, like
Hmm.
is very poetic, like with
Oh,
this
oh,
refrain.
enormous.
There was evening and then there was morning, the next day, the next day, the next day, and you wonder like, yeah, is song built into the very fiber of our being, like
I think so.
yeah, me too.
Like I think it's a hard thing to. I think that's why it's a difficult thing to quantify
Yeah.
because it is. It's one of those things that like I think of the unconscious in a way that way as well, right? Like
Hmm.
when you talk in the science world, we know how to turn it on and we know how to turn it off, but we don't really know very much about, which is a major part of our being. Like we spend like third of our life in the unconscious, right?
Yeah.
Like asleep as an example, right?
Hmm.
And you think music connects us with that in
Yeah.
some manner that's deeper than what we can like that's deeper than kind of a pinprick, so to speak, like a physical because it's not physical. Like it's not like you're getting hit with anything. It's not like you're but it affects us in a very physical way in a sense, right?
Yeah. Mm.
So you hit on something very interesting. I think
Yeah.
that's a very cool cool
Yeah.
thing.
I don't know if you planned on talking about this today. Hey, I'm gonna message my wife. I don't know if it'll make my screen go blurry because my computer, I thought was way more charged than it is, but it's only at 6%.
Oh,
So
you're going down.
let me message her and she might bring me my charger downstairs right quick.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
See, so that was like interesting to kind of catch that because it's like I think of in the pastoral role where you're with people all the time, being able to connect with people is an enormous part of that. And if
Mm,
that's one of your spiritual gifts, that's a pretty big thing.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because my wife and we talk about this, how like I need my alone time, like my
Yes.
solitude time. And it's almost like when we did our church planting assessment, like we had to be assessed by our mission board and everything, and everybody ended up saying that I was the introvert and Krista was the extrovert, which is funny because like all of our marriage, we've kind of thought the opposite.
Yeah.
And so we started kind of diving into it. And Krista is always the one who would initiate people coming over or going somewhere, being out in public, doing a party, doing an event or something like that. And so like she's always the initiator of those things. People can come over whenever. And so like I've like changed over the years. But I was never that initiator, and I think it's because I do enjoy communicating with people, but it does take effort. And like whenever we're in a big crowd of people, I do feel like, oh, I really we need to talk, we need to engage people, like we need to take an interest in people, like all these things. And so it's like I'm more of an extroverted introvert. Once we're in that situation, I'll be all about it. Krista, on the other hand, she's like she'll initiate it, and then once we have the big event, she doesn't have to say anything. She can just be part of it, sit back.
Interesting, eh?
Yeah, and so she's like an extrovert. She wants to make it happen and be in that environment. And then once we're in it, yeah, she can just take it easy
I
and
love that explanation actually.
yeah, yeah. So it is very interesting, and we didn't know it until about a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago when we did our assessment. We're like, oh yeah, we totally see this in each other now.
It's funny how these things can, like, when we catalog them or categorize us in these things, and how when we kind of go, but I'm not really like that. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
like because I was gonna say I can relate to a similar example, especially when I was out doing the book events,
Hmm.
and people would say, "You're not an introvert." And always going, like, my whole life I'm an introvert. I like books, right? I want to be
Yeah.
quiet. I'm the guy that goes to the shelf in the bookstore and don't want to talk to anybody. But at the same time, you're in a mode where, like I said, now I recognize, like, you have to be around people. I think I've always recognized that, but I haven't been able to articulate that in that sense. So you
Mhm.
kind of fall into that, well, you're either an introvert or you're an extrovert. Well, actually, there's a lot of gray in there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I even like I can see it now playing out when I think like we like going to markets. Like we've got a bunch of farmers markets. My wife likes it more than I do. And the reason is because like and as I'm walking there, knowing that I don't want to buy something from this particular booth, I like am anxious thinking about that because like I don't want to make eye contact with them if I'm not going to buy something from them because
Right.
that's the hope, and maybe there's some people pleasing tendencies in that too, like it's like
Yes,
you would talk
absolutely.
to them like yeah, none of your stuff is essentially worth buying, so I'm going to move on now, like and so like yeah, she likes it much. Now I've got some vendors that I have a relationship with and I like talking to them and
Right.
we'll buy some different things, but like she can just go and look at
Doesn't
everything
matter.
and not worry. Yeah, she likes being in that environment, and whereas like I'm like, I I can't help feeling bad that I'm totally walking by and not making eye contact with these people because I'm not going to buy anything that they have,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it totally play. Yeah, it's just funny. Like once you kind of learn it a little bit, it's like, oh yeah, I totally see that here and here and here.
You know,
Yeah.
when you bring that out, which I think is kind of fascinating in the marriage, and this is the idea that two can be one. Like, we see this in the Trinity where three can be one,
Mm,
but in a marriage you see two can be one. Like, and you see how, like, this is why we get to be so connected, is because we to function kind of as a whole, like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
yeah.
Like, we need both of those in order to do what we're doing, as an example, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if this plays into personality types, but my wife's phone and computer and iPad never gets below like 60%. Never. And I feel like my stuff is always at 15%. It's like
I think that does fall in that
yeah.
area, a personality thing, because
Yeah.
it's one of those things that you see that in different people, because it's like you got the same phone,
Yeah.
and it's like it's kind of yeah, it's interesting how you see technology and that kind of brings it together, like, for sure.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to, like, what you're involved with, and this, like, shall we say, your raison d'etre, why you're here, while you're in Nanaimo planning a church. Um, what things that, if someone was listening to this and they're hearing this and they're going, like, I'm wondering what to do. Like, what would you say to them? Like, what, like, and this could be anyone. This is not necessarily a person that's I'll call it, they're looking for, searching for something.
Hmm.
You know something, obviously, about that. You're very, like, that's what you do. What kind of things would you say to someone listening that's saying, like, I'm gear, I want to do something important with my life. I want to do something. I'm not seeing necessarily the corporate ladder is my way. I'm not sure, like, I see my parents, they have everything they have, what they want, never, but they don't seem happy. Like, what would you just say to someone that you would see that might be asking those questions?
Yeah. And is this person a believer, like somebody that's following Jesus?
Not necessarily,
Okay.
but they're searching. I would
Yeah.
say, like, they're not, like, I'm firmly an atheist. I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting something because that tends to be I'm not looking for anything.
Yeah.
But someone that's like is asking questions, but not necessarily a believer. Like,
Yeah.
and I might actually go on the other side too and say, yeah, they are a believer. But
Yeah.
the first one is around just someone that's just trying to figure out where they should go. Like, because
Yeah.
it's like part of the reason why I'm asking this, Cam, is that I think there's like a 35-year span for me that if something had and this is just my journey. So not it like this is what happened.
Hmm.
It wouldn't necessarily change even if someone had come in, but given the chance that someone is looking or searching for that, like what would you say to them? Like what would you say like yeah, just what would you think you would say to them that maybe would kind of give them an incentive or something to be not necessarily to go and follow what you and your wife are doing, but just where they're at, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely want to hear then about just kind of their worldview, or if they think, do you feel like there's a specific purpose that you
Mm,
have that is kind of steering your life, there's probably a bunch of questions to ask to kind of dissect that. It might not be as direct as that, but like, what are you burdened for? Like, what do you have a passion for?
mm,
What do you want to see happen in the city or the community that you're currently living in? But then also, like, I mean, we know that the greatest need and an experience for them is going to be to encounter Jesus, to know how Jesus feels about them, that he loves them and wants not just for them to acknowledge that, but to have a relationship with him, to sit with him and know him and
mm,
be with him and abide with him. And so, yeah, that I really want to get it to. Have you ever prayed before? Do you believe that there is
mm,
something or someone that is kind of guiding this, or even has made you to feel this way, and so I want to hear about their spirituality in that sense. And so you're saying, yeah, maybe this person is, at the most kind of or at the least agnostic, kind of, yeah, there's something,
yes, yes.
and so with that, there's this really helpful book that my wife and I read like right when we moved here. Actually, Gary and Margie started reading it with us too, and it's called "I Once Was Lost," and by two different authors. And
Oh,
I can't remember their names right now. I Once Was Lost, but it's these college ministers that interviewed 2,000 people that had moved from atheism to or extreme Christian skeptics to having a relationship with Jesus. And so they just interviewed, hey, what was your journey like? Like how did this happen?
oh wow.
And through these interviews with 2,000 people, they identified these five common thresholds as that people cross on their way to Jesus. And so it's really helpful because you can identify like where people are at on their pathway, not just in Jesus. Like we talk about in the church world, like what's your next step in Jesus? We want to help you along the path that you're walking with Jesus. But what about people that aren't actually in Jesus yet?
Right.
There are steps that you take toward him. And in the book, they even say this, like we tend to think of a non-believer and a believer as just being like binary, like there's only
Yes.
two options. It's like we just have to force that on switch into on, and they're a Christian now, but no, usually there's a series of steps that you actually take toward Jesus. And so that's been helpful for us because one, the first step that they realized, a threshold that people crossed, is they were very skeptical of all Christians to all of a sudden they had a Christian in their life that they trusted and that they enjoyed having conversations with. And so, like, really quick, the thresholds were they trusted a Christian and then they moved a place from being complacent in their worldview to curious. So they actually want to hear
Yes.
your perspectives. But then there's a difference between being curious and actually being open to change. So then all of a sudden they just kind of start like fantasizing in a sense of what would my life be like if I believed and I participated in all the things that they believed and they participated in and they
Right.
practiced. So open to change, but then the third one is they go from a place of then they start kind of meandering. They let you pull them along. They might come to your small group or to your house, or maybe they even come to service. They're kind of just being pulled along. They go from a place of meandering to actually seeking. They're like, hey, I'm reading this. I read this today. I'm trying to figure out what it means. Hey, I'm reading through the Gospel of Mark, and I'm really trying to figure out, like, Jesus went by himself in the darkness to pray. Like, what does that look like? How do I pray?
Right.
They
Right.
start actually seeking. And then the last threshold is they move from seeking into the kingdom of God itself through relationship with Jesus Christ. And so, like, what I want to do then, if I meet somebody that is searching for purpose, it already sounds like they're kind of curious to know, what is your driving force to
Ah.
your life? Like, okay, they trust me enough to ask me these kind of deep questions. It sounds like they're at that threshold. How can I move them to the next threshold, to where they're not just curious, but they're actually open to change. They're fantasizing about what Christianity would be like in their life, what Jesus would be like in their life, and then, like, plug them into community. Like, come,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
just be part of this and see how we interact with one another and what we talk about and what's important in our lives, and then just leading them one step at a time across those thresholds. And we see that with neighbors here, that, like, we've identified where people are at, and Chris and I still talk about it. Like, we read that book, not very long ago, but it's been about a year, and we're still like, yeah, it really seems like, this neighbor is now almost at a point where she's seeking, like,
Yeah.
wondering, hey, what does this tangibly look like in my life? How do I actually put this into practice? Like,
Oh
and doesn't
yeah.
have a relationship with Jesus yet, but she's very close to it, you know? So
What's the book called again? Like that sounds like a very interesting book for people.
it's really short. It's great. It's called
That's even better.
I Once Was Lost.
I
And
once was lost.
the like subtitle is What Postmodern Skeptics Taught Us About Their Path to Jesus.
Ah.
Yeah.
Okay. I like the subtitle there, the
Yeah.
postmodern thing, because it's like one of the things that has I've struggled a little bit with, and that it's kind of come with kind of a Tim Keller, almost a C.S. Lewis,
Hmm.
because both of those had the ability to make things that were quite complicated. I won't say simple, but understandable.
Yeah.
And the postmodern world, to me, has taken the complicated and just made it more complicated.
Yeah.
And they leave us hanging. And that's why often the title is I Once Was Lost, because we are lost.
Yeah.
We get out there and we're hanging by a bunch of different tangles, and no one's kind of brought them back to say, but it's like this.
Yeah.
And I think that Keller was um, gifted at that in a major way to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And the more I read C.S. Lewis, like it's quite crazy to like the Screw Tape Letters for me has become one of my favorite books because it's
Yeah.
just so in your face.
Yeah.
And like I think that way, and you say, well, you think like the devil then?
That's right.
What? No, that's not right. That can't be right.
Yeah.
No, I can't. I don't agree with that. Like this is why I can see why it was banned, right? Because
Yeah.
like no one wants to feel that you're fooling me. You're messing with my brain.
Yeah.
So to that point, because you kind of bridged that, I always like to know what people are reading. So I like that's a pretty wild book to be reading to get a handle on it. Do you have
Yeah.
other ones that like made a difference in like your faith, your that
Yeah.
helped with that?
Ye- that helped with how we engage people in conversation,
No,
or
no. Did like in your I'll call it your spiritual, your seeking God and Jesus that
yeah.
were like well just literally powerful in your life that are
Yeah.
memorable books that like you mentioned J.R.R. Tolkien as an
Yeah.
example, right? Like maybe Lord of the Rings was one of those that made it
Yeah.
like
I love Lord of the Rings. And
okay.
yeah, and then I've got, like, on this side of me right here, like,
Okay.
those first three shelves right here are
Okay.
all just fantasy books. So, like,
Oh,
I love just, like, fiction and adventure stories.
oh that's
And
cool.
yeah, so, like, those have just kind of played a big part, I guess, and just anything with a map in the book too. Like, it's just so fun to see these new worlds. And I'm the type of guy, like, if I'm going to a movie, like, to a movie theater, like, I don't like movies that are based off of real life. Like, it's like, oh, this is real life. I get this every day. Like, I want to see a world that I've never seen before. Like,
Hence Star Wars.
yeah, man. So I love that. And before. before I dive into fantasy, because then I'll just like lose respect and lose credibility. Like I do love. It's a newer one recently. Gentle and Lowly by Daniel
Yes,
has been so impactful in my
that's
life.
the number one book of this that's been mentioned on this podcast.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I absolutely love, and then I even loved reading. It wasn't a follow up. It was just kind of it pairs nicely. It's called Deeper, and just what it means to grow deeper into Christ. You're not going beyond Christ. You're not
Okay.
going beyond the gospel. You're going deeper into just like all the meat of the gospel, and it was really good as well. And
Same
then
author?
yeah, same author,
Okay.
Daniel. I love A.W. Tozer's Pursuit of God. Like I
Oh
read
wow.
that. Remember reading that in high school and being impacted by it, but then I just read it probably a couple months ago, and it blew me away. Like I was like, "Oh my goodness, why have I not revisited this sooner?" And
I pull it out for prayers.
yeah, wow.
Like how he ends each chapter with a prayer.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
our past, I don't know whether you met Pastor Mark Birch. He's the
Mhm.
lead pastor at North,
Yeah,
and he that was one of the books that he pulled prayers out of,
yeah,
and I kind of like grabbed a hold of it because it's kind of it's like a divinely created book to me,
yeah.
like how he even put it, because apparently he wrote it on a train ride or something.
Golly, I
Like
didn't know that.
it was like kind of a crazy story. I first heard about this book early on in this podcast, and I had a gentleman on who was actually part of the publishing of my book,
Hmm.
having no idea he was a Christian.
Yeah,
Like no idea. Like we had all our business dealings and everything, it never came up.
yeah,
And then he told me that was the book that was impacted him the most actually.
man, that's awesome.
So it was kind of a crazy thing. So
Yeah,
the I'm always fascinated, and you mentioned Star Wars earlier on, and I meant to go to this a long time ago, but Star Wars was written, and George Lucas counsel, you probably know this, a lot with Joseph Campbell.
mm-mm,
So do you know Joseph Campbell?
I don't.
So Joseph Campbell did a lot. He was a kind of like a Christian professor, I would say,
Mm,
but he wrote like The Power of Myth, and he wrote I want to say The Invisible Man, but it's not. It's he brought myth and Christianity, spirituality together. It's
mm,
a massive book. And but Lucas reached out to him to help him with the script for Star Wars. So like I'm watching, I sometimes watch Star Wars and I'm going like, there's some interest like with the Force, right, and things like
yeah,
that. I said like there's some real kind of Christian overtones, like Jesus God overtones in this. And then he was actually interviewed, this Joseph Campbell, by Bill Maher years ago on like a 10 piece, and it went through the power of myth and the number of his books because he was a professor.
yeah,
But very interesting because I read him in my kind of journey, like I'll say back into God, and that's kind of where I was getting all these different.
yeah,
He was the first one that really brought together the unity of marriage for me,
mm,
where man and woman come together and become one.
yeah,
And I often use this being mathematics and science, like 1 + 1 = 2. Well, sometimes two goes to equal one, or three can be one as well when you look
yeah,
at the Trinity. And like that really messes the mind up, right? Because
yeah,
it's like, well, that doesn't work.
yeah.
So I'm kind of thinking here that how do we land this thing today?
I
But
know. Yeah,
because it's like I've got a bunch of other things where I would like to kind of go, because I'm very interested in your day to day work, in what you do, but I'm also cognizant of your day, and I'm thinking of, we've gone through a lot of different things. Is there anything that like if you wanted to like leave people? So I'll go back to what we started with and how I met you in the eulogy,
yeah,
and how you said about God is faithful. That's what you said that Gary
mhm.
said to you. Is there anything that you'd like to kind of say to wrap this kind of episode up in how you might feel we haven't talked about, you would still like to have known or recognized? Not trying to put words in your mouth or anything like that, or put you on the spot, even though I'm putting you on the spot. And it doesn't, we don't have to wrap up it, but it's just like what
Yeah.
what you've recognized, it's an important part. Like that's why I said, when you hear Gary saying this, like he knows he's near the end, and he still says God is faithful.
Yeah.
Like that's not something I would anticipate someone becoming comfortable with going to the Lord, right? Like it's like a scary thing for
Yeah.
so many, right? Like it's the end, and many see it that way, but yet Gary could come back and say God is faithful. I to
Mhm.
me, so I'm kind of saying like, what could you add to that in the world where you're really taking, and shall we say, with God's God God's hands on you building a church, like how that goes, because it comes back to my first question: how do you go from
Yeah.
Atlanta, Georgia, to Nanaimo, BC? Like
Yeah.
it's like you're a different culture, as you said, the Bible Belt world even.
Hmm.
Um, you're a different nation. Like we're like the Dominion of Canada, right? Like we were founded with the British roots, whereas the U.S. is a republic. Like, and
Yeah.
that has deep things too, even though we are all people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I think of, especially with Gary's testimony, God is faithful. Like the only people that can really say God is faithful are the people that are following God,
Mm.
because if you've built your life around setting your own goals, and trying to achieve them, like maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you see God's faithfulness, and when you're following Him, and you see His expectations and what He's called you to, and then He fulfills that, against all odds. And you're like, oh my goodness, God has provided, and so that's a hard statement to say when you haven't built your life around following Jesus and obeying what He has revealed, and so what I love about Gary is that he kept saying yes. He kept saying yes. Like he told me that there had been some things that had come up before they sold their house in Abbotsford. Some different medical, some symptoms that he'd experienced, and so they went to go get tests, and they had said if the tests come back and they're positive for cancer, obviously we'll take that as the Lord telling us we need to stay here in Abbotsford. And that was about 7 months before they moved. They got some tests done, and they all came back clear. So they said, "Yes, Lord, we're moving." And they moved. They said yes, and they came, and
Wow.
then 7 weeks after the move is when everything, they found out everything.
Changed.
Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and then passed away another 7 weeks after that. And so, like,
Wow.
man, it's funny because I speak about Gary, and he's somebody that I knew for less than a year. And so like it's like I share a story, and if Margie listens to this, or his kids, his family, his friends listen to this, it's like, man, Cam, there's so much you don't know, and they are right. There's so much I don't know about Gary, but all I know is that in that last year of his life, he was saying yes to the Lord in major ways, and then proclaim God's faithfulness.
Wow.
And so what I see, one of the things I see, it's easy to see it in my own life, over the years, and something I still have to fight against. And it's easy to see it, just in Christian culture in general. Is like, is there's a lot of people who believe in Jesus, but we still treat him as if we can still set all of our own goals,
Ah.
and then take off to achieve them without really considering what Jesus desires to do in and through our lives. And it's hard because that's a lot to sacrifice, to say, to open up and say, all right, Lord, I guess this is on the line, but like, you can direct me wherever you want. Like, that's a lot to say. And
Wow.
yet what we see in the Gospels, when Jesus called his disciples, it was a profession change right then. Like Like they left their boats and they followed him. Matthew left his booth and he followed him.
Followed him. Yeah.
Like it's like everything is on the line for Jesus. And so like my biggest thing, and it's so dumb that this is my biggest thing right now because it's like obviously this is what you should be focusing on. But like I cannot get away from disciple making and discipleship, what it means to actually be a disciple of Jesus. And there's so many great like
Oh.
definitions and books that people have written on discipleship and the two that I really like, one's from a book called The Disciple Maker's Handbook, that a disciple is somebody that's following Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
is being changed by Jesus, and is committed to the mission of Jesus. And very similar to that is John Mark Comer wrote a book called Practicing the Way, where he says the three goals of a disciple is to be with Jesus, to become like Jesus, and to do what Jesus did. Like your whole aim in life is oriented around those three main goals, to be with him.
Yep.
Like to sit with Jesus. Every day you're sitting with Jesus. Like give yourself to that practice every single day. When your mind drifts throughout the rest of the day, like focus on cultivating this awareness of Christ's presence with you, be with you. And that's the first and everlasting call of a disciple. Like follow me, come and see, come and be with me, abide in my word. Jesus called his disciples to him that he might then send them out to preach. But first he was, come and be with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so like if we made that our aim to be with Jesus, and then as we put into practice his way of life, like what he taught, always looking to the Father. I don't do anything on my own. I only do what my Father has told me. I only speak what I hear my Father speaking. Like he's only doing. Why would we think life we can do it any other way? Like we're not Jesus, and we're like, all right, I'm going to make my own plans, and Lord, bless it. Would you bless these things that I'm striving to do? And yet Jesus, the Savior of the world, who is God in the flesh, he didn't live like, he didn't, all right, I've got this plan. He's like, no, Father, I only look to what you're doing. I only do what I see my Father doing. And so like, I think we need to shift. And like what I love seeing in these college students that are about to come out here and visit, and like, all right, is the Lord moving us out here? We need to hold everything on the line. Like, Lord, cut off whatever you need to cut off and redirect wherever you need to redirect. Or if I need to totally forsake something, I will totally forsake it. But like, make your central aim in life to being with Jesus, to becoming like him as he develops your character, your virtues, like your patience, your kindness, your love for others, your interest, your compassion, and then to do what Jesus did. And all those things, like they're not really separate. They all just kind of like weave, like the Trinity, like they're just constantly weaving and feeding into each other. And yeah, when it comes to making disciples, I feel like I have made some worship attenders in my life and been content with that. Man, he wants every minute of every day, and if we're focused on being with Jesus, becoming like him and doing what he did, following Jesus, being changed by him, being committed to his mission, then he's going to orient our lives in a major way. And we're going to follow him in ways that prior to focusing on him, we didn't think were possible. And yet, after that following, after that obedience, I think we'll say the same thing. Gary, man, God's faithful.
Oh yeah, amen to that.
Yeah,
because it's like you just said. Why do we think we can do it any other way?
yeah,
That's the part that's become so startling to me.
yeah.
Is that like what it is? When you said there's two things that really struck out to me. Do you watch The Chosen?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of kind of pushback on The Chosen because there's fictional parts to it. I get it. But and I've heard people say anything that leads to scripture of the Bible is probably a good thing. So we'll go with that. But the other thing that I think is astounding is exactly what you said, is what the disciples gave up to follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And it's too easy to read the gospel and just say, well, he's going to teach men to fish rather than to fish for them, as an example, pulling Peter out to not from the being a fisherman, or like you said, Matthew. And in the words, you don't get the backstory of all they went through.
Yeah.
And I think The Chosen helps you to get, even if it's fictional, it just broadens. It's the story of them and who they were. Because the Bible's about God. It's not about Matthew. It's not about John or any of the other disciples. It's about God. but it's one of those things it's really to your point is what you're giving up to follow Jesus. You said it right at the beginning is like, I follow my goals to get through my life, right? Like I've lived that, Cam. I've lived it. I know that it's, as C.S. Lewis says, it's not fulfilling. Like you get there, and then what have you got?
Yeah. It's pretty stressful.
It creates that within us in a
Mm.
very big way to me. The other part that takes me back to the book of Joshua, and this is what really became a revelation to me, and that was when they're going to take Jericho. And I think most know about the walls of Jericho, but they get across the Jordan again, and they've got this group. They've spent 40 years in the wilderness. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, but what was important for me was the fact that we're going to go and take the land from those that live in Jericho. And what are we going to do first? We're going to go and circumcise the soldiers. Wow, what a battle plan. Like
Yeah.
let's make us weaker, right? Like that's the first thing they're going to do. So okay, we got that. The story behind it and why. Yes, okay, got that. Then the second thing is when they go to Jericho, what are they asked to do? There's no armament gain. There's no get your cannons ready. We are going to march around the walls 7 times and blow trumpets while we carry the Ark of the Covenant. And I was going to say, that's not a battle strategy either.
Mm.
And then the walls came tumbling down. It's like it's it's kind of directly what you just said to me, as far as, yeah, many of the things that Jesus is showing us, if we follow him, don't make sense.
Yeah.
One of those is this podcast. It's just they don't, and I think that's just an amazing thing to say, and then
Mm.
put it kind of in memory of Gary, and still having that so strong. I like
Yeah.
that's a beautiful thing. Like
Mhm.
it's to me. I kind of I had to add those two things. I really feel they are important and kind of almost amplifying what you said, because it's such a real thing. And I think when you start to with this, you said the CCC, is it
Yeah.
that's the
Canadian Campus Collective.
Canadian Campus Collective. Um, if you're a young person and you're looking at it, you look into this. Like this may give you another route that you've never had any idea that could take it. And
Yeah.
and I think I'm kind of getting to the point where I probably need to land this thing, because it's taken almost 2 hours out of your day. But it's been really important to me to do this, because
Yeah.
it's really, you're in the infancy of what a church is about, and building that. And we've crossed so many different things about who we are as human beings,
Mhm.
which is a beautiful thing. It's I don't know what it's just it's a crazy thing that you've been able to take this and go to where you're going. And now I'm actually, I don't really know Matt Margie well, but I know some Margie who's connected with this and what it's doing in her life.
Yeah.
And it's like, and yet it had such an impactful thing in her world. Like it's just, and now Gary's not here with us. He's here in spirit. He's backing this, what we're talking about
Yeah.
today. He's
Yeah.
there smiling. See, I knew you guys were going to get to introduced to one another.
Yeah.
Cam, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how is the best way to do that? Do you like do you have a church website? Do you have like what's the way? Social media? What do you?
Right now we have got a Facebook account, which is Hub City Church,
Okay.
Nanaimo. Yeah, Nanaimo is the hub city of the island, so Hub City Church. Or this is pretty easy to remember, Cam at hubcitychurch.ca.
So, are you comfortable with people
Yeah,
emailing you?
yeah,
You'd love that.
uh-huh,
Because I was going to say I can put that into the brief, like the description for the episode as well,
yeah,
just to kind of. But primarily your place on social media is on Facebook with
yeah,
Hub City.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, Cam, I, my hats off to you. I thank you very much for joining us today. I'm kind of blown away by what you and your wife are doing there in Nanaimo. I think it's as we've said here today. I think this is being led by God and
Yeah.
Jesus, and where that's going, and what it does in our lives. It's like it's a real thing, and when
Mm.
you become open to it, unfortunately, I think the game's over.
I know.
But it's a good game to end. It's a
Yeah.
good game to end because
Yeah.
it gets you into where I'll say what you mentioned purpose, and I think it really aligns with what your purpose. And what more important thing could you even be doing in your
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah.
So with that, anything else you'd like to say, Cam?
Hey, I love this quote. I've been texting it to my boys, to my brothers. Francis of Assisi, who did
Oh
some
yeah.
amazing ministry and revitalization and revivals, and yet toward the end of his life, he said this. He said, "Brothers, let us begin, for until now we have done little or nothing." And like maybe some people read that as like, wow, that's depressing. And I'm like, I see it. I'm like, oh my goodness, yes. Like I want to read that every day, because I can look at my life and see God's faithfulness and yet know how
Oh
much
yeah.
God's done in the history of the world, how much more he's going to do. Like I love, brothers, let us begin. For until now we have done little or nothing. Yeah, Lord, take us there.
That might be the title of the episode.
Cool.
Well, with that, I was going to say I'll thank you for joining us today, and
Yeah.
hearing what Cam Moore, he's at Hub City Church. He's planting that with others' help in
Mhm.
Nanaimo, BC. I was going to say, you want an adventure in your life. We've given you lots of that today, and maybe a new purpose to find that.
Mhm.
With that, Cam, thank you very much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Hope you'll subscribe to my my YouTube channel, Better Than Not, and you'll hear more about this. And hope you listen to the whole episode. With that, bye for now. Thank you. Well, are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not.